Captain Lee Hyun pulled his cargo ship into the docking bay of Zephyr Station. The massive space station floated in the darkness between stars, filled with creatures from across the galaxy. Ships of every shape and size moved in and out like busy insects. Hyun had made this trip dozens of times, bringing supplies to the outer colonies. It was routine work, but it paid well. As his ship settled into the docking clamps, Hyun noticed something odd happening on the lower levels. Security guards in dark uniforms were pushing around a group of strange beings. These creatures looked like they were made of living crystal, their bodies glowing with soft blue and purple light. They moved with grace, but the guards treated them roughly. Hyun had heard of these beings before. The Kithara, they were called. Their bodies gave off some kind of energy that made machines go crazy. Most species in the galaxy hated them for it. They said the Kithara were walking disasters, breaking everything they touched. Hyun grabbed his jacket and headed down to the main deck. He wanted to see what was happening. The station's lower levels were dark and cramped, filled with the smell of recycled air and engine fuel. This was where the poor lived, where refugees waited for ships that might never come. When he reached the refugee section, Hyun saw the guards forcing Kithara families out of their small rooms. Children made of crystal clung to their parents, their lights flickering with fear. The adults tried to stay calm, but Hyun could see they were scared too. "Move along, freaks," one guard shouted, pushing an elderly Kithara with his shock stick. "You're shorting out half the systems on this level." The old Kithara stumbled but kept his dignity. His name was Elder Hasung, though Hyun did not know it yet. The elder's crystal body was dimmer than the others, showing his great age. He stepped forward to speak with the head guard. "Please, we have nowhere else to go," Elder Hasung said in perfect galactic common language. His voice had a musical quality, like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. "Our ship is damaged. We cannot leave until repairs are made." The head guard, a thick-set alien with gray skin and too many teeth, laughed. "Not my problem, Crystal Head. Your kind makes our computers crash just by breathing. Find somewhere else to sparkle." "But the children," Elder Hasung tried again. "They are hungry and cold. Surely you can show mercy." "Mercy?" The guard spat on the metal floor. "You want mercy? Here's mercy. I'm not spacing you right now. Be grateful and get moving before I change my mind." Hyun watched from the shadows as more families were forced out. The Kithara had almost nothing with them, just small bags and the clothes on their backs. Their crystal bodies pulsed with soft light, and he noticed that some of the corridor lights were indeed flickering. But the effect seemed gentle, almost pretty. A small Kithara child, no bigger than a human 6-year-old, dropped a small toy as his family was pushed along. It was carved from the same crystal material as their bodies, shaped like a tiny bird. The child reached for it, but a guard kicked it away. "Leave it, freak. You're lucky we're letting you keep what you have." The child began to cry, his crystal body flashing brighter with emotion. The lights in the corridor flickered more wildly. The guards raised their shock sticks. That was enough for Hyun. He stepped out of the shadows and walked toward the group. "Hey," he called out. "What's going on here?" The head guard turned to face him. His small black eyes looked Hyun up and down. "Nothing that concerns you, human. Keep walking." "Looks like you're throwing families out onto the street," Hyun said, keeping his voice calm but firm. "These are refugees. They have rights." "Rights?" The guard laughed again. "These walking EMPs don't have rights. They are a hazard to every piece of technology on this station. The sooner they are gone, the better." Hyun looked at the Kithara families. They were watching him with hope in their glowing eyes. He had never seen their kind up close before. The stories said they were dangerous, but all he saw were scared people trying to protect their children. "They are still people," Hyun said. "They deserve to be treated with respect." "People?" The guard's voice got louder. "These things aren't people. They are walking disasters. Every ship captain in the galaxy knows to stay away from them. Their presence alone can kill a crew if it shorts out life support." Elder Hasung stepped forward carefully. "Kind human, you should not risk trouble for us. We are used to such treatment." But something in the old being's voice made Hyun angry. It was not just sadness, it was the sound of someone who had given up hope. Someone who expected cruelty because that was all they had ever known. "No," Hyun said firmly. "This isn't right." The guard moved closer, his shock stick crackling with electricity. "Last warning, human. Walk away or you can join them in the cold." Hyun looked at the guard, then at the Kithara families, then back at the guard. His cargo ship was big enough. His next run was to New Sol Colony, and they were always short on workers. Maybe it was crazy, but sometimes crazy was the only thing that made sense. Fine, Hyun said with a slight smile. Maybe I will take them with me. 3 days into the journey to New Seoul Colony, Captain Lee Hyun made a discovery that changed everything he thought he knew about space travel. His ship was running better than it ever had before. The engines hummed with perfect efficiency, the navigation systems gave readings so clear they seemed magical, and even the old coffee maker in the galley was working perfectly for the first time in years. The Kithara families had settled into the cargo bay, turning the large empty space into a temporary home. Their crystal bodies cast gentle light throughout the area, creating patterns on the walls like underwater shadows. The children played quietly while the adults helped with whatever work they could do safely. Jin-woo, Hyun's young engineer, ran up to the bridge with excitement written all over his face. "Captain, you need to see these numbers," he said, waving his tablet computer. "Our quantum drive is running at 147% efficiency. That should be impossible." Hyun frowned at the display. The readings showed power levels that his ship had never achieved before. "Check the sensors again. Maybe there's an error." "I've checked 5 times, Jin-woo replied. "It's not an error. Ever since our passengers came aboard, every system on the ship is working better. The power core is more stable, the life support is cleaner, even the waste recyclers are running perfectly." Elder Hasung appeared at the bridge entrance, moving with the careful grace of his kind. His crystal body pulsed with soft blue light. "Captain Lee, may I speak with you?" Hyun nodded and gestured for the elder to enter. "Of course. Is everything all right with your people?" "Yes, thank you for your kindness," Hasung replied. "But I must tell you something important. What your engineer has noticed is not unusual. Our quantum resonance does strange things to what you call primitive technology." "Primitive?" Hyun raised an eyebrow. Hasung's light flickered in what might have been embarrassment. "Forgive me. I do not mean to insult. Your technology is different from the advanced quantum systems used by most galactic species. Your machines are simpler, more direct. Our energy fields confuse complex quantum processes, but they seem to enhance simpler systems." Jin-woo stared at his readings. "You mean this has happened before?" "Many times," Hasung said sadly. "But no one has ever been willing to test it properly. Most species throw us off their ships the moment something unusual happens. They assume we are breaking their machines." Hyun sat back in his captain's chair, thinking hard. "So while you mess up their fancy computers, you make our basic human tech work better?" "It appears so, yes." 2 days later, they reached New Seoul Colony. The planet hung in space like a green and blue jewel, with small cities scattered across its surface. So-Minute, the colony coordinator, was waiting at the spaceport when they landed. "Hyun, what have you done?" So-Minute asked as she watched the Kithara families exit the cargo bay. "Do you know what these beings are? They'll shut down half our equipment just by walking around." "Just wait and see," Hyun said with a grin. The first test came that very evening. A massive solar storm struck the system, sending deadly radiation toward the planet. The colony's orbital defense platforms should have been able to handle it, but 3 of them had been damaged in a recent meteor shower. Without full protection, the storm would fry every electronic system on the planet's surface. Elder Hasung and 2 other adult Kithara volunteered to help. They stood in the colony's main control room, their crystal bodies glowing brighter as they focused their energy. Suddenly, the damaged platforms began working again, their systems enhanced by the Kithara presence. "Impossible," So-Minute whispered as she watched the readings. "Those platforms were dead. How are they working?" "The Kithara can predict quantum fluctuations," Hyun explained. "They're helping the platforms anticipate the storm patterns and adjust the shields automatically." The storm passed without damaging a single building. When it was over, the colonists gathered around the Kithara families, no longer afraid but amazed. The crystal beings had saved them all. Word spread quickly through human space. Within a week, 3 other colony worlds sent messages asking if any Kithara refugees needed homes. Within a month, human ships were actively searching for Kithara survivors, offering them partnership instead of rejection. Captain Park Jun-ho of the merchant vessel Star Dancer was one of the first to take on Kithara crew members permanently. "Best decision I ever made," he reported to the colonial authority. "My ship runs like a dream, and my Kithara navigator can plot courses through quantum storms that would destroy other vessels. We're making 3 times our normal profit on dangerous routes that other captains won't touch." The news reached Elder Hasung as he worked in the New Seoul Colony's new quantum research center. Human scientists and Kithra thinkers worked side by side, creating technology that neither species could have imagined alone. For the first time in 3 generations, our people have hope, Hasung told Captain Hyun as they watched Kithra children playing with human kids in the colony gardens. You have given us something we thought was lost forever. What's that? Hyun asked. A future, the elder replied, his crystal form glowing warm and bright. But their success was not going unnoticed. Deep in galactic space, the Galactic Council was receiving troubling reports about humans and their new crystal allies. Something would have to be done about this dangerous partnership before it spread too far. Dr. Park Minute-ho stared at his computer screen in complete shock. The numbers made no sense. According to every law of physics he knew, what he was seeing should be impossible. But the evidence was right there in front of him, glowing on his monitor like a miracle written in mathematics. The joint human-Kithra research station floating above the planet Kepler 442b had just achieved something that broke every rule in the galactic science books. Their quantum computers were not just working, they were alive, thinking, predicting things that had not happened yet. Admiral Kim Bo-ra, you need to see this, Minute-ho said into his communication device, his voice shaking with excitement. The Admiral's face appeared on the screen from her command ship 3 systems away. She was a tough woman with sharp eyes who had spent 20 years fighting pirates in the Outer Rim. Nothing usually surprised her, but when she saw Minute-ho's data, her mouth fell open. That's not possible, she said flatly. Computers can't predict solar flares 3 days before they happen. That's like asking a calculator to tell you what you'll eat for breakfast next week. But they are doing it, Minute-ho insisted. When we connect human intuition with Kithra quantum processing, we're not just adding 2 abilities together. We're creating something completely new. Something that neither species could do alone. The proof was everywhere around them. The human colony of Dahan had been built in the Crimson Nebula, a region of space so dangerous that most species considered it uninhabitable. Deadly radiation storms swept through the area every few hours. Strange quantum effects made normal navigation impossible. Ships that entered the nebula were usually never seen again. But Dahan was not just surviving, it was thriving. The colony's ships moved through the nebula like dancers, always knowing exactly where the safe paths were. Their buildings were powered by the nebula's own chaotic energy, converted into clean electricity by human Kithra technology that seemed to work like magic. Elder Sungjin of the Kithra science caste worked beside human researchers every day. His crystal body would pulse with light as he processed quantum data, while his human partners used their instincts to guide his calculations toward useful answers. Together, they had invented things that made the galaxy's greatest scientists look like children playing with simple toys. Your species sees possibilities where others see problems, Sungjin told Dr. Park during one of their late-night research sessions. My people can calculate infinite probability patterns, but we cannot choose which ones matter. You can feel which path leads to success, even when logic says it should not work. Their ships could phase through solid matter like ghosts. Their weapons could hit targets by predicting where they would be instead of where they were. Their defensive systems read enemy intentions before the enemies even knew what they wanted to do. It was as if the laws of physics had decided to bend themselves around human Kithra partnerships. But success brought unwanted attention. Chancellor Veltar of the Galactic Council arrived at Dahan Colony with a fleet of official ships and a face full of anger. He was a tall, thin alien with purple skin and 4 arms, each one decorated with the rings of high office. He had ruled the council for 30 years and was not used to being surprised by primitive species. This ends now, Veltar declared during the emergency meeting in Dahan's main conference room. His voice echoed off the crystal walls that the Kithra had grown to house the colony's government. This unnatural alliance is disrupting the established order of galactic civilization. Ambassador Yoon Ji-hai, the human representative, sat calmly across from him. She was young for a diplomat, but her time working with the Kithra had taught her patience. Chancellor, with respect, we have done nothing wrong. We have simply found friends who help us be better than we were alone. Better? Veltar's 4 hands slammed on the table. You have created weapons that can destroy our finest warships. You have built colonies in regions that should be impossible to inhabit. You are making technologies that threaten the balance of power that has kept peace in this galaxy for 1,000 years. Elder Sungjin's crystal form flickered with calm light. We seek only to live in peace and share our gifts with those who welcome us. We have never attacked anyone. Your very existence is an attack. Veltar shouted. For generations, the galaxy has worked because each species knows its place. Humans are supposed to be primitive traders and colonists. The Kithara are supposed to be harmless outcasts who break things and beg for scraps. But together, you have become something that could challenge the great powers themselves. Through the conference room's windows, they could see human and Kithara children playing together in the colony's gardens. The kids had invented a new game that involved the Kithara children making light patterns while the human children tried to catch the lights with special gloves. Both species were laughing with pure joy. "Look at them," Jihai said quietly. "Is that really so threatening? Children of different species learning to be friends." Veltar looked out the window and his face grew even more angry. "Friendship between species is not the problem. The problem is that your friendship creates power. Power that could destroy the careful balance we have built." "Or," Jihai replied, "it could help us build something better." But Veltar had already made up his mind. "The Galactic Council will meet in 7 days. We will decide what must be done about this dangerous alliance. I suggest you use that time to prepare your defenses." The message arrived on a cold Tuesday morning that changed everything. Admiral Kim Bora read it 3 times before she could believe what it said. The Galactic Council was giving humanity an ultimatum: surrender all Kithara to Council custody within 72 hours, or face complete war. "They want us to betray our friends," Bora said to her war council aboard the battleship New Hope. "Every human world that refuses will be cut off from galactic trade. Every human ship will be attacked on sight. They're trying to force us to choose between survival and honor." Captain Lee Hyun, now serving as her tactical advisor, shook his head in disgust. "Most of our governments are already caving. Earth Command sent orders this morning to begin rounding up Kithara families." Reports flooded in from across human space. On Terra Nova, government troops surrounded Kithara settlements with heavy weapons. On New Tokyo, families that had lived peacefully together for months were being torn apart. Human politicians made speeches about necessary sacrifices and returning to galactic good standing. But not everyone was giving in. The colony worlds that had partnered most closely with the Kithara refused to obey. New Sol declared independence rather than surrender their crystal friends. Dahan colony sealed its borders and prepared for siege. A dozen other worlds followed suit. "The question is simple," Admiral Bora told her officers. "Are we strong enough to fight the entire Galactic Council?" Elder Hasung entered the war room, his crystal body dimmer than usual with worry. "Admiral, my people do not wish to be the cause of human suffering. Perhaps it would be better if we surrendered ourselves." "Never," Bora replied firmly. "We stand together or we fall together. That's what partnership means." The first test came at New Sol Colony. A massive council fleet appeared at the edge of the system, 200 warships led by Fleet Commander Zethkol himself. The alien commander was famous for crushing rebellions quickly and brutally. He expected this fight to be over in hours. But what Zethkol found was unlike anything he had ever encountered before. Human pilot Kang Donghyun sat in his fighter cockpit, his hands steady on the controls. Beside him, connected through a quantum link that human and Kithara scientists had developed together, was his partner Resonance of Dawn. The young Kithara's crystal body pulsed with concentrated thought as she processed battle data at incredible speed. "Incoming missiles," Resonance of Dawn said in her musical voice. 17 targets, but I can see where they will be, not just where they are." Donghyun smiled and pulled his fighter into an impossible turn. To outside observers, it looked like he was dodging weapons that had not been fired yet. But through his connection with Resonance of Dawn, he could see the future patterns of the battle unfolding like a map. All across the battlefield, human Kithara teams fought as one mind in 2 bodies. Ships phased in and out of normal space, appearing behind enemy vessels that thought they were safe. Weapons fired at empty space, only to hit Council ships that moved into those exact spots seconds later. Commander Zethkol watched his battle plans crumble in real time. "How are they doing this?" he roared at his tactical officer. "They're anticipating our moves before we make them." "Sir, it's like they can read our minds," the officer replied, his voice full of fear. The answer was simpler and more terrifying than mind-reading. The human Kithara partnerships had created something new, a form of combat intelligence that could calculate thousands of probability paths and choose the winning moves before the enemy even knew they were in danger. When the flagship Thunder of Authority found itself surrounded by 20 smaller ships that had somehow predicted every evasive maneuver it would make, Zethkol finally understood what he was truly facing. This was not humans with alien pets. This was a genuine fusion of 2 species into something greater than either could be alone. "All ships, retreat," he ordered, his pride forgotten in the face of impossible defeat. As the Council fleet limped away from New Sol, leaving behind 40 destroyed warships, news of the victory spread across the galaxy like wildfire. On 1,000 worlds, beings that had been rejected and cast out by the Galactic Order heard the same message. Someone had stood up to the Council and won. Admiral Bora stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the enemy retreat. Captain Hune joined her at the observation window. "Think this will convince them to leave us alone?" Hune asked. Bora shook her head. "This is just the beginning. We've shown them that their power isn't absolute. Now every outcast species in the galaxy will be watching to see what we do next." Through the ship's communication system came reports from across human space. The Void Dancers, who existed partially in another dimension, had sent their first diplomatic message in 3 centuries. The Helix Minds, whose collective consciousness frightened individualistic species, were requesting contact. The Star Shepherds, nomadic wanderers who disrupted trade routes just by existing, had changed course toward human territory. "The rejected are coming home," Elder Hassang said, his crystal form glowing bright with hope. "And this time, they know they will not stand alone." The galaxy would never be the same. News of the victory at New Sol spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. On distant worlds that had never heard of humans before, strange beings lifted their heads and listened to something they had thought was gone forever: hope. The Void Dancers were the first to respond. They lived partially in normal space and partially in another dimension that most species could not even understand. For 300 years, they had been banned from civilized worlds because their presence made other beings feel dizzy and confused. But when they heard that humans had defended the Kythera, they sent a message through the quantum networks. "We wish to meet these humans who stand with the rejected," their communication said. "We have been alone for so long." President Choi Soo-jin read the message from her office on New Sol Colony. She was a former mining engineer who had never expected to become the leader of a rebellion against galactic authority. But here she was, making decisions that would shape the future of dozens of species. "Send them coordinates for Haven Station," she told her aide. Haven Station was what they had renamed the old Zephyr Station, turning it from a place of rejection into a beacon of acceptance. Within days, more messages arrived. The Helix Minds, whose collective consciousness allowed them to share thoughts across vast distances, had been feared by individualistic species for generations. They sent representatives asking if humans might accept their gifts of perfect coordination and planning. The Star Shepherds changed their ancient migration routes for the first time in 1,000 years, their massive bioships turning toward human space like flowers following the sun. These nomadic beings had been cast out because their migrations disrupted trade routes, but they carried with them knowledge of the galaxy's hidden paths and secret resources. "They're all coming," Elder Hassang told President Soo-jin as they stood on Haven Station's observation deck. Through the massive windows, they could see ships of dozens of different designs docking at the station's expanded ports. Some were sleek metal vessels, others looked like living creatures, and a few seemed to flicker in and out of reality itself. "Are we ready for this?" Soo-jin asked. "We're talking about reshaping galactic civilization." "We have no choice," Hassang replied, his crystal body pulsing with calm light. "The old way divided the galaxy into rulers and outcasts. We can build something better, a civilization based on cooperation instead of fear." The real test came when the old powers began to crack. The Altrian Empire, which had dominated 3 sectors for centuries, found their best pilots defecting to join human Kythera flight teams. The Zenith Corporate Alliance watched their most valuable trade routes become obsolete as Star Shepherd bioships opened new paths through previously impassable regions. But the biggest shock came from an unexpected source. Chancellor Veltar himself arrived at Haven Station, not with a fleet of warships but with a single diplomatic vessel and a face full of defeat. "The council is falling apart," he admitted to President Soo-jin during their private meeting. His 4 arms hung at his sides in a gesture of surrender. 17 member species have already applied to join your Free Stars Alliance. The others are demanding my resignation. Soo-jin looked across the table at the being who had threatened to destroy everything they had built. "What do you want from us, Chancellor?" "I want to understand," Veltar said quietly. "For 30 years, I have maintained order through strength and fear. I thought that was the only way. But you have shown that cooperation can be stronger than control. I need to learn how." The signing of the Diversity Accord took place in Haven Station's main hall, a vast space that the Kythera had grown from living crystal and the Void Dancers had expanded using their dimensional abilities. Representatives from 63 species gathered to witness the birth of a new kind of galactic civilization. President Soo-jin stood at the podium, looking out at beings she could never have imagined just a few years before. Crystalline Kythera sat beside shape-shifting flux entities. Void dancers flickered in and out of visibility next to solid, dependable stone builders. The diversity was overwhelming and beautiful. Today we sign more than a treaty, Sujin said, her words translated into dozens of languages and thought patterns. We sign a promise that no being will be rejected for being different. That strength comes not from conformity, but from the courage to embrace what makes each of us unique. Elder Hasung placed his crystal hand next to her signature on the document. One by one, representatives of species that had been enemies for millennia added their names to the same page. Years passed. Captain Lee Hyun, now an old man with gray hair and laugh lines around his eyes, walked through Haven Station's residential levels with his granddaughter Lee Nai. The young woman worked as an engineer alongside Kithara, void dancers, and beings from dozens of other species, designing ships that could travel between dimensions and planets that could exist in multiple realities at once. Grandfather, Nai asked as they watched children of 12 different species playing together in the station's parks, do you ever regret that day when you first helped the Kithara? Hyun smiled as he watched a human child teaching a young void dancer to ride a bicycle, both of them laughing as they flickered between dimensions. Regret it? That day I learned the most important lesson of my life. What lesson? That the best thing you can do in this universe is give someone a chance to be more than what others expect them to be. In the distance, the last holdout worlds of the old Galactic Council transmitted their applications to join the Free Stars Alliance. The age of rejection was over. The age of acceptance had truly begun.